Hi friends, welcome to part 4 of my Emma costuming adventure. In this video I'll be showing you how I made this dress from the 2020 Emma movie. Emma wears this dress a lot, and this is a sheer cotton dress that is worn over top a colored petticoat so that the petticoats could be worn interchangeably so that you could have different silk petticoats underneath to change the color, and this is kind of a trick that makes it look like the dress is different each time she wears it. I started with a mock-up and made the pattern by stretching out my petticoat pattern so that I could gather it. Also, remember to wear your foundation garments during fittings so that you can accommodate for the extra bulk and shape the garment correctly. Once I was happy with my mock-up, I cut it out of my cotton foil. I ordered 5 yards of this and it was just the right amount. I'll leave all the links to my materials down below. Then I cut 2-inch strips to make piping. Every seam of this dress is piped, so I cut the total measurement I needed from this cotton macrame cord. Then I got my zipper foot and stitched the cord inside. I also piped my smaller drawstrings to use for just the top edge of the dress. Then, sandwiching the piping between the seams, I sewed the side and shoulder seams of the bodice. To gather my bodice, I pinned each individual pleat because I wanted it to look as close to the original as possible. Then I top stitched those into place. I set aside my bodice to work on the skirt. Both the front and back skirt pieces are trapezoids, but the back one is wider to allow for more gathers. I also cut my skirt pieces the length of my fabric so that I could add the hem and pin tucks later, so we needed that extra length. My fabric was just the right length for this, so it worked out perfectly for me, but if you have a little bit of extra, then you might want to cut off a little bit more. You're probably going to need about like 7 to 9 extra inches on the bottom, so just keep that in mind. As for the width of my trapezoids, that was based on some witchcrafty math that was done based on how much fabric I had left over for the skirt. I would give you the exact measurements that I had written down on a piece of paper, but in the month that it took me to make this dress, I think I cleaned up my studio, and I think I might have discarded that paper somewhere, so I don't have it anymore. But I'll try my best. Anyway, I French seamed the skirt together like I did with the petticoat. Once the skirt was pieced together, I left it ungathered so that I could prepare the embellishments. For those puffy circles we see on her dress, I did some more digging around on Pinterest and found some more dresses from the Regency era that were like this one, and it kind of looks like it is just extra gathered bits of fabric that were sewn to the dress. I'm still not completely sure how this was done historically, but I just kind of created my own way to do it, and it still ended up looking a lot like the one from the movie, so I think it turned out okay. So I cut 16 of these ovals the size of my palm, and based on one of the references, it looked like Emma's dress puffs were also embroidered, so I traced a maple leaf pattern onto mine based on the least blurry reference I had. And then I just free motion embroidered these. After giving them a quick press, I zigzag stitched the edges to prevent fraying and gathered the edges. Next is that embroidered ruffle on the bottom of her skirt. I drew up a pattern based off of this picture and traced it onto my ruffle 6 times. My ruffle was about 14 by 108 inches. I'm not certain on the length, but it was enough to fit at least 6 of my pattern on there. I know that the ruffle was like the width of my fabric and then half a width of my fabric, and I can't remember if my fabric was 60 inches or 45 inches, but hopefully that kind of helps give you an idea of what the length was. Then I used an embroidery stabilizer to embroider my pattern. If you don't have a stabilizer, you can also use paper. I used paper because I ran out of stabilizer and it works just fine. After you sew it, you can put it in the sink and then rip the paper out that way. But if you do that, you will want to use a plain white printer paper and not like recycled paper with ink on it, because then the ink will stain your fabric. 3 weeks of embroidery later, I peeled off my stabilizer and paper and added insertion lace to the maple leaves. Then I roll hemmed the top of my frill. Next I created a 4-inch hem and stitched it with a blind hem stitch, and I attached my ruffle. Above my frill I created 2 pin tucks. One was 1 inch and the other one was 1/2 inch. And make sure that when you add in the pin tucks you're counting for the folds in length that you're taking out. Because when you create pin tucks, you're folding the fabric and stitching it down and then folding it back over. So make sure you account for all the fabric that's going into those pin tucks. Now I am attaching the puffed circles onto the dress, so I thought I may as well show you how I'm doing it. So I have them pinned 8 inches apart, and the 8 inches is from the middle of one circle to the other. And then I also measured it 2 inches up from the pin tuck. And so what I'm doing is I have them just pinned at the top and bottom, and then I am going through, and I like to sit down. I have the dress on my dress form, and I like to put the skirt over my knee so that I don't catch the petticoat underneath. I'm just taking my needle, and then I'm going to catch a couple threads of the skirt fabric, and then catch a couple threads of the puffed circle just above the gather stitch, and then pull that through. Okay, so a quick little detail that I totally forgot to mention was the back of Emma's dress. There is a section where there is no ruffle. As you can see here, I have cut mine off a little around the back, and I think there's about a 23-inch gap between where the ruffle starts and ends. So I just thought I would point that out to you if you want to make this dress and you want to make it screen accurate. Emma has these 2 3/4-inch pleats at the side of her skirt, so I added that to mine. And before joining the skirt and bodice, I added the piping to the top and bottom of my bodice. Alright, so now I'm going to put the cartridge pleating into the back, and the pleating just starts where these seams kind of line up, so at this little point on either side. And then I'm just going to take my thread right here and start at the beginning, and then I'm just going to kind of hand pleat it, and I'm going to try and get the tiniest pleats that I can. And I'm just going to kind of gather it, and there should be 3 rows of pleats. So to create this unique sleeve shape that Emma has, I had to not only have this curve at the top where it is attached to the shoulder, but I had it curved on the bottom as well, because that helps give it a little bit more puff. And the sleeve sits right underneath the armpit, which is what kind of gives it that kind of squished puffy shape. So I cartridge pleated the bottom of my sleeves. On some of the references you'll notice that she does have multiple rows of stitching on the sleeves as well, so I was also convinced that these were also cartridge pleats. After pleating the sleeves, I sewed the cuff onto my sleeves and then added piping into the arm's eye. Then I hand sewed my sleeve and cartridge pleated the top. After that I added 5 buttons and buttonholes to the back. Then I added lace trim details with some bleached cotton lace. And now the dress is finished. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below in the comments. You can follow me on Pinterest or Instagram, and there will be links in the description for that. In the next video, we will be making the pelisse that goes with this dress, so I'm super excited for that. And yeah, I will almost be done with the project, and then after this project, I will have an announcement for my next project, which I'm also excited about because you guys helped pick it out. So yeah, until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you later. Whoa, why is the camera tilted so much now? Wait, what? I also hold on, 2, 3, on some witchcraftery mathematical. I gotta give my iron a drink. She thirsty. Oops. Where did I put my scissors? And it kind of looks like it is just gathered bits of extra fabric. Excuse me. And it's got a knot. Clearly it's not a big enough knot.